Everyone. I'm Monique Flasch from the Glenview Public Library. Thanks for being here for this year's Glenview Reads Together kickoff. This is our kickoff event with our author, Haben Girma. Our conversation is being recorded. And if you want to put questions in the chat or save a question for later in the conversation, we will be taking those and hopefully answering those later as time permits. Let me give an introduction to Ms. Haben Girma. Haben was born and raised in the San Francisco Bay Area where she currently lives. Her memoir takes readers on adventures around the world, including her parents' homes in Eritrea and Ethiopia, building a school under the scorching Saharan sun, training with guide dogs and getting her own guide dog in New Jersey, climbing an iceberg in Alaska, fighting for blind readers at a courthouse in Vermont, and talking with President Obama at the White House. Warm, funny, thoughtful, and uplifting, this captivating book is a testament to Haben's determination to resist isolation and find the keys to connection. As the first deafblind person to graduate from Harvard Law School, Haben Girma is a human rights lawyer advancing disability justice. President Obama named her a White House Champion of Change. She received the Helen Keller Achievement Award, a spot on the Forbes 30 Under 30 list, and Time 100 Talks. Haben believes disability is an opportunity for innovation, and she teaches organizations the importance of choosing inclusion. Our book this year is her memoir, Haben, the deafblind woman who conquered Harvard Law. And here she is, joining us from the San Francisco Bay Area, Haben Girma. Did you want to tell people how you're communicating?
Hello, everyone. Yeah, that's an excellent question. So I'm not hearing and seeing Monique. You heard that I'm deafblind, but it's really important to be able to connect and communicate with your community. And I discovered early on that while my sight and hearing are terrible, my sense of touch is great. And I learned Braille in first grade, and Braille tech kept evolving over time. And today, I'm holding up a Braille display with Braille along the bottom. And this is what I'm going to be using for our conversation. I have a typist typing what Monique is saying. I'm reading it and then responding by voice. You might notice there's a delay between when a question is asked and when I respond. That is because the typing is coming through. There's still a lot of shame in our culture for not being fast or not doing things in the mainstream tickable way. That shame is part of ableism. Instead of trying to force our bodies and minds to conform to some mainstream ideal, we should hold space for all our different bodies and minds and voices. I have a high register voice, and there's still so many communities that dismiss high register feminine voices. We need to create spaces where all voices are valued, regardless of whether it's high register or low register, regardless of whether there's an accent or they're signing or using assistive devices. And it's up to all of us, readers, writers, to create that community where we get to hear and listen and read to all different kinds of voices. And back to you.
Why did you decide to write a memoir, to share your story with everyone? It would have been very easy to just live a quiet life, so to speak.
You're right. It would have been easier to not write a book and just live a quiet life. I was asking myself, how can I teach people to notice ableism? How can I motivate more people to advocate. And stories are incredibly powerful. Stories wrapped up in a lesson can move people to take action, can shift how people think about those of us who are different from the mainstream. So I analyzed my life looking for those stories that best teach people to notice ableism, how ableism intersects with sexism, how ableism comes up in our schools, in our workplaces. So my book is a collection of anecdotes that teach people to notice ableism. Ableism, ABLEISM. It's the system of beliefs and practices that say disabled people are inferior to non-disabled people. When schools build classrooms and don't imagine disabled students in those classrooms, when a tech company builds a self-driving car and doesn't imagine disabled people driving that car, those are all examples of ableism. It touches every aspect of our society. So we need everyone to notice it and then work to remove it from our communities. Back to you.
So you've told us how you communicate, but how do you do your writing? What's your method? Did you just start with certain stories? If you've looked at Haben's book, you will know that it is a series of stories. And did you start with a timeline that you wanted to share, or did you focus on particular incidents that you thought would be helpful for others?
So my goal wasn't to teach people about my life. My goal was to find those experiences, moments in my life that would help teach people about ableism. So I made a list thinking of those anecdotes. And then I formed those lists in an outline. I started with an outline, and from the outline worked story by story. Each story turned into a chapter. So start with a list, then a more detailed outline, then writing out those stories, then lots of editing. I didn't write every day. There were some days, there were some periods of time where I wrote every day. Then there were other periods of time when I didn't write at all. I think it's important for people to write stories in ways that work for them. Some people have more time for that. Others don't have as much time. So it depends on the individual. Shape and write your stories in ways that work for you.
This can be considered your story a coming of age story, an ADA story, and a history, because we learn your history and the history of the community that you came from. How hard was that to balance throughout the book?
It wasn't a priority. So I wasn't even trying to balance all those things. So I went to law school and advocacy was my top priority. And I came to this book after law school, after working as a litigator for a while. So my top priority is, how do I teach people to advocate? I am still facing so much discrimination. I still get drivers, taxi drivers, rideshare drivers who refuse to transport me because I'm disabled. I still have dance clubs that won't let me in because I'm disabled. There's so many digital services that I can't use. There are government services I can't use because of access barriers, because of ableism, people building websites, apps, businesses without thinking about disabled people. And it is frustrating and exhausting. So I'm continually asking myself, how can I change this? What else can we be doing? So that book is one of the latest things I've done to help shift that. But since publishing, I've worked on other things. I keep asking myself, what else can I do? How can I teach more people to start prioritizing accessibility? So many people think of it as charity, as an afterthought. They build their product and they said, maybe later we'll make it accessible when we have more time. You need to design it for accessibility from the start. It's easier to have access if you design it from the start. Then also, there are legal requirements. In the United States and in many other countries, there are legal requirements requiring services and programs to be fully accessible. So access, energizing people to make access a priority, that was my top priority.
How did your family's experiences, which are a major part of the beginning of the book, experiences with war and death, really impact the way in which you approach your life? I think once one reads it, one can see how you experience the joy of life.
There are so many parallels between the experiences of a disabled person trying to carve out a path in a society with a lot of access barriers and a lot of ableism, and the experiences of refugees, people from other countries escaping war to try to create a new path in a country full of so many unknowns. And I grew up hearing those stories from my parents. I didn't have the answers of how do you excel in a school that wasn't designed for people like you. And my parents didn't have those exact answers, but they shared their stories of surviving in war, coming to the US, making their own path in the United States when there were so many unknowns for them. And internalizing and processing those stories helped me develop a roadmap. And I talked to other disabled people from immigrant families. There are a lot of similarities between the immigrant story and the disability story.
What led you to become a lawyer? You're already a teacher, you're already an advocate, but why did you choose the extra education and pursue a law degree and end up at Harvard of all places?
You're right. It is a lot of extra work to go to law school, 3 more years of schooling, and expensive too. Why did I do it? As a college student, I faced a lot of employment discrimination. Very few people wanted to hire a deafblind person. Even though I had excellent grades in school, it didn't seem to make a difference. Employers still assumed I was incompetent. So I thought I would increase my chances of securing employment if I continued my education. It would give me a competitive edge to have another degree in addition to the Bachelor's of Arts. And also, the law is a powerful tool for dealing with discrimination. I faced a lot in college, at school, and outside of school. Employment discrimination was very top of mind. There's also a story in the book that highlighted that shift for recognizing the power of the Americans with Disabilities Act. My college had never had a Braille reader before. They leaned into that opportunity to build up their Braille skills, and they purchased a Braille embosser. They got translation software, and a reading specialist trained herself to convert print to Braille. And so I had all my textbooks in Braille. My exams were in Braille. There was just one problem. The cafeteria menu was in print. I would walk into the cafeteria and sighted students could browse the print menu, but I couldn't access the menu. It was only in print. Blindness wasn't the problem. The problem was the format of the menu. The problem was ableism. I would have been able to read the menu independently if it was in Braille or another accessible format. But I couldn't, and I was a vegetarian, so it made it even more frustrating to not know which of the stations had vegetarian food. There were about 6 different stations. I'd go to one at random, wait in line, get a plate, find a table, try the food. There were some unpleasant surprises. I told myself, millions of people around the world struggle for food. Who am I to complain? My mother, when she was my age, was a refugee in Sudan. Who was I to complain? Maybe this was a lesson that disabled people should get used to inferior services. So I tried to just ignore the situation, to just tolerate it and deal with it. At least I was getting my books in Braille so I can take my classes, do well in my classes, and I tried to just tolerate not having access to food information. One day I went to the manager and I said, I can't read the print menu, but I'd be able to read it if it were in Braille, or you can post it online or email it to me. I can read emails and websites when they're accessible. The manager said, we're very busy. We have over 1,000 students. We don't have time to do special things for students with special needs. Just to be clear, eating is not a special need. Everyone needs to eat. There's this myth of independence, that non-disabled people are independent and disabled people are dependent. It's a myth. All of us are interdependent. Many of you like drinking coffee. Very few of you grow your own coffee beans. You depend on other people to grow the coffee beans. And that's okay. We need to be honest about the fact that all of us depend on other people. Disabled or non-disabled, we're all interdependent. The manager didn't seem to understand this. So I was stuck not having access to food information. And I tried to go back to just tolerating the situation. I talked to friends. I did research online. And I learned about the Americans with Disabilities Act. I went back to the manager and I explained the Americans with Disabilities Act prohibits discrimination against students with disabilities. If you don't provide access to the menu, I'm going to take legal action. I had no idea how to do that. I was 19. I couldn't afford a lawyer. Now I know there are nonprofit legal centers supporting students with disabilities. But back then, I didn't know that. All I knew is I had to try. I had to do something. The next day, the manager apologized and promised to make the menus accessible. They started emailing them on time in formats I could read. So I would get an email and it would say, Station 4, cheese tortellini. I could use my cane and navigate all the way to Station 4. life became delicious. The next year, there was a new blind student at the college. He got access to the menus. My advocacy made a difference for someone else. And I realized when I advocate, even for seemingly small things like menus, it has an impact. And I thought I could build up these skills and have a larger impact. And law school would help me build up those skills. So I started seriously looking into law schools, working on the LSATs, applying to the schools. We have a lot of small barriers impacting women, disabled people, people of color. And many of us tell ourselves, oh, it's just a small thing. There are worse things in the world. Just deal with it. Those small barriers add up. When we take the time to address a small barrier, we build up the skills to master the larger obstacles. And it's my hope with the book that more people will be moved to advocate. Start with the small things in your communities. Are your menus accessible? How about your churches, the playgrounds? Are they fully accessible for disabled kids, disabled adults? And help remove the barriers that exist so more people can be full members of our communities. Back to you.
The fact that you just had trouble eating in a cafeteria environment, I think brings home to many of us how simple things that we consider simple can be very difficult depending on the situation. I thought that part of the book was very insightful. My next question is, were you surprised at the response to the book? What about your family's response? Because there are stories about them in there.
So my family had seen almost all the stories before publication. There was one chapter called The Chapter My Parents Shouldn't Read. My parents did not know about that story. And I think a lot of kids have a few stories that they've never shared with their parents. Like many parents, my parents love me, but they're also protective. And that specific story where I almost ran into a train is terrifying for me and for a lot of other parents. There is a desire to protect disabled children by preventing them from ever making mistakes. But if you don't make mistakes, if you don't explore your community, you don't really grow up and build up skills. So there's the balance between never leaving your home and being 100% safe versus going out to explore and building up your skills. So it's a tricky balance.
One of your skills is that you learned how to work with a seeing eye dog, and we see him behind you. That's Milo. Did you want to tell everyone who Milo is and how Milo is a big part of your life?
So there is a German Shepherd seeing eye dog behind me. And in my book, I talk about training with my first dog, Maxine. I went to the Seeing Eye in Morristown, New Jersey. A lot of people think that guide dogs are like machines and you give them a GPS coordinate and they take you exactly there. But the human the blind person needs to know where they're going. And we as blind people need to have orientation and mobility skills and give that information through the way we communicate with people around us or our dogs. So I'll give my dog instruction like left, right, forward. He'll move around obstacles in our path. He'll stop for changes in elevation like stairs, curbs, but I need to know where I'm going. And in the book, there is quite a bit of drama as I learned to build up a relationship with my first seeing eye dog, Maxine. And seeing eye training, guide dog school training is a lot of emotional work. Time, exhaustion, you spend about a month building up a relationship, building up trust with the dog so that you can communicate well together and safely navigate the world. It's a bit like that with humans too. If you want to have a really good relationship with a human, you need to invest emotionally and time to build up that trust and have a good relationship. So Maxine, my first dog, taught me that. And unfortunately, she passed away due to cancer. And I really, really missed her, and I really, really loved navigating with a dog. So several months later, I went back to the seeing eye, to the guide dog school, and trained with my new guide, Milo. Back to you.
Well, he looks like he's having a very relaxing afternoon. I'm sure he deserves one. The next question is, what do you think are some of the current challenges that people with disabilities are now facing as technology grows, as life gets more complicated? What do you think are the current challenges? Not that all of the older challenges have been solved, but what's new on the horizon?
You know, the current challenges are connected to an ongoing challenge of people building and creating products and services without thinking about disabled people, whether that's autonomous vehicles or tools that use AI. It all comes back to building products and services without thinking about disabled people. It comes back to ableism. I wish more people would think about disabled people when they're building artificial intelligence tools, when they're building space shuttles, schools, libraries. All of our bodies change as we age, and we deserve dignity and access at every stage in our lives. About 1 in 4 people live with a disability. Around the world, there are over 1.3 billion disabled people. That's a huge community. We're one of the largest historically underrepresented groups. So more people should be planning and investing in accessibility as we build tech, communities, and other programs. Back to you.
As a disability attorney, is there current disability legislation on the horizon that we should be made more aware of? Because I think sometimes, like you said, we're not aware of what's coming up or coming down the path.
So the Americans with Disabilities Act was passed in 1990, and a lot of people have expressed frustration that more than 30 years after the ADA, there's still so much discrimination. There's still so much unemployment, underemployment for the disability community. And there's still people building tools and tech without accessibility. The structure of the ADA puts the responsibility on disabled people to file complaints. So the people who are struggling with the lack of access have the extra burden of filing complaints. I would love to see the system change and have institutions taking more responsibility and having the burden of taking the initiative of removing barriers rather than putting the burden on disabled people. There's also some misinformation about the ADA. The ADA does not apply to tech. That's not true. The ADA does apply to tech. And in fact, one of the chapters in my book is about a case to make a library accessible. Blind readers wanted to be able to read books on a digital library. And the library said, nope, the ADA only applies to physical places, not virtual places. My team disagreed. And we sued the library. The National Federation of the Blind sued Script, the library. And the judge in the case held that the Americans with Disabilities Act does apply to digital spaces. And after that, the library agreed to work with the National Federation of the Blind to make the library accessible for blind readers. That was very exciting. But there's still people who think that the ADA doesn't apply to tech. So if any of you know folks who work in tech, remind them tech also needs to be accessible.
Are there, this one's not on the list, but are there companies that you think have done a good job or in certain cases have made leeway for making their disabled customers easier to use their services?
I get that question a lot, and I'm always nervous to answer it because companies are constantly changing. One moment an app is accessible, the next moment there's an update and they break accessibility. That's happened so many times to blind and disabled people. So rather than trying to select a company to be a role model and copy them, instead strive to be the role model. Make your organization the role model and build up your accessibility capabilities. Make sure you have a digital accessibility expert on your team. Prioritize accessibility whenever you're rolling out new programs or updates. So prioritize accessibility and start to be the role model.
Excellent. You're a great reader. How can you tell us, one, how you access new titles and what system you use? And then is there a book that you've read recently that you could recommend that you really enjoyed? Doesn't have to be nonfiction or fiction, doesn't matter.
Blind and deafblind people read books in so many different ways. Some people read in Braille, sometimes it's hard copy Braille, paper Braille, and other times it's computer Braille. On a refreshable Braille display, similar to the one I have, there are different kinds, some bigger, some smaller. Those of you who use blind tech, this one's called a Braille node. Some people listen to books, either audiobooks or using their screen reader. A screen reader is an application that reads text out loud. And some blind and deafblind people have some vision, and they might use magnification to increase the font size and read books in large print. So lots of different tools, physical and digital, for accessing books. And if you've already read my book, I highly recommend reading Alice Wong's book. Alice Wong is a disabled activist, also living in California, and her book is called Year of the Tiger. It just came out last year.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Is there, you talk about your adventures in the book, getting to go and building houses near the Sahara, convincing your parents to do that, and then climbing and sliding down in Alaska, icebergs. Is there another adventure you would like to have in your future?
So I am very curious and I want to experience as much as I can. I didn't seek out icebergs. Those icebergs sought out me. I was visiting Alaska and we were exploring Mendenhall Lake, which freezes in the winter. It's right next to the glacier, so it gets very cold in the winter. And we were walking along, and my friends who are Alaskans and used to icebergs and glaciers identified an iceberg that had such a smooth surface along one of its sides. It looked like a slide. So we climbed up and slid down. I am very curious about my world, and not being able to see things means one of the main ways I can experience something is either to read about it or experience it firsthand. So I love experiencing things firsthand, but I don't really have a list of things that I'm dying to have these types of adventures. They just sort of happen through a community. Back to you.
So what are you working on next? When we talked earlier last week, you had a specific project in mind. Did you want to share that with everyone at this time?
So I wrote a book, and it's not accessible to everyone. It's not accessible to little kids. So I want to be able to make a version of my book that's accessible to a younger age reader. I've never written a picture book before, so it is an amazing learning opportunity to test and build up my storytelling skills. How do I communicate these ideas in a way that a 3-year-old will understand? And it also means reading picture books. There are some picture books in Braille that have tactile graphics, so you can also feel the pictures in addition to reading them in Braille. And they are very, very charming. I didn't have access to them as a kid. I only actually discovered them when I was older. I don't know if they were around. They probably were around, but they're very, very charming. So it's been fun to explore tactile Braille picture books and work on making one of my own so that I could teach kids about accessibility, disability inclusion, and ableism.
I'm sure it's going to be wonderful. How do we keep up with you? How do you keep the community around you up to date with what you're doing?
Probably the best way to keep up with me is to follow me on social media. I'm on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. And my username is Haben Girma. So my name, one word.
We're going to take some questions from the audience and from the chat. I'm going to try and get a couple or two from the chat. Oh, here we go. This is a good one. What is your message for other disabled people who are trying to study/work?
My recommendation for other disabled people is build community with disabled people, build friendships, seek out mentors in the disability community. And that way you will learn strategies, techniques, and you'll also have a community to support you when you are struggling with access issues or the school or workplace barriers. And one way to do that, if you don't have one, is to start with local disability organizations. That could be a disability outdoor club. It could be the local lighthouse. It could be a national organization. So tap into those resources to start building up your community.
What advice, and I think this goes for everyone in some cases, but I'm sure it especially can be disconcerting to a disabled person. What advice would you give to someone who enters a room and feels like they don't fit in?
That is a really good question. If you have the energy for it, you can strive to shift the culture in the room so that you do fit in. You might walk in and the room has a culture where you don't fit in. Shift that culture, change that culture. Your presence has the ability to change the room. So allow yourself to change the room so that it's big enough and inclusive enough to fit you. That takes courage, and it helps to feel comfortable being open about your differences. So if you're blind, you can talk about being comfortable explaining what you need help with, what you don't need help with, being clear about your boundaries, explaining to people what they can do to be more accessible for communication. If you have a communication disability, it's wearing the teacher hat and the ambassador hat, and it is a lot of work and exhausting. And sometimes you might feel like, I don't want to deal with this right now, and you can take a break and stay home. So I have to advocate all the time. And sometimes I make a choice. I'm too tired right now. I'm not going to explain how guide dogs work. So today I'm choosing to be here and be present to answer disability questions. But you don't have to do that all the time. It needs to be a choice to say, okay, I'm going to walk into that room, I'm going to network, and I'm going to change the culture so it's more accessible. That takes energy, ambition, commitment. And you also have the choice not to, and to say, I'm tired, I'm not doing that today. Back to you.
That does take a lot of energy. And as we all know, during recent years with pandemic, it's been taking even more energy out of us to communicate and socialize with our community. I'm going to ask if there's any questions from the room. Ryan, can you jump in and have a question or two?
I don't have any, do you, oh, I'm sorry, excuse me. Here we go. Get them started, maybe.
Sure. I'm wondering, if you live by yourself, do you have problems with paying bills or having to call someone in to fix something like a sink, or how do you handle just everyday life like that?
Yep, I did.
Very good question. So I have had access to Braille from a very early age. I started learning Braille when I was 6 years old. And because of my strong Braille skills, I can connect a Braille computer to a smartphone. And that gives me the power to text people, to email. I can go on apps, and there are accessible bill pay apps, and I can use those apps and independently pay my bills. So many blind and deafblind people use their smartphone. If they're a Braille reader, they'll use an external Braille computer and their smartphone. But there's so much diversity in the deaf, blind, and blind community. Some people have hearing that they use to listen to their phone, and their phone will read things out loud. A screen reader will read things out loud, and they will navigate those bill pay apps or texting an email with a family member or handyman, or maybe they themselves can fix their broken sinks. So it depends on so many people, but I use my phone extensively, and I'm able to do a lot of things by being able to use accessible apps. There are some apps that are not accessible, and I need to find a workaround. I'll ask someone else to help with that. But pretty much all the apps I use day to day are accessible, and I can use them on my own. Back to you.
You're getting a lot of love from Brazil. Kisses from Brazil. And they mentioned that your book is available in Portuguese. How worldwide has your book gone?
I didn't know my book is available in Portuguese. That is amazing. Oh, it's not available. Oh, okay.
Yeah, they're completely, I'm sorry, they're complaining about
I wish
it.
my book is available in Portuguese. That would be amazing. I'd love to visit Brazil.
Well,
So
looks like you
right
have
now,
fans.
I think the book is available in Chinese, Japanese, Korean, French, and Turkish and English. But we would love for it to be translated to more languages: Portuguese, Amharic, Tigrinya. And the way that happens is a translator and publishing house of those languages would reach out to my publisher, Grand Central Publishing, and ask for the rights to translate the book. So if you know translators in Portuguese who would be interested, encourage them to work on the book.
Janet, do you have another question from the audience?
What was your proudest moment? Would you say it was graduating from law school, working on the script case, or meeting the president in the White House, or was it something else altogether?
Those are all very amazing, powerful experiences. One of my proudest moments would have to be publishing this book. It's a work of art. How do I communicate respect for disabled people? How do I move people from inspiration to action? That's an art, to guide people through that process. And readers have reached out to me expressing appreciation and sharing some of the barriers in their communities and their commitment to help remove those barriers. And that is deeply rewarding to know that one book can touch lives and get people to advocate in their own communities. So that's one of my proudest moments.
We have another audience question. You're living a really big life, and you have very confidently achieved many goals and built very meaningful relationships. I'm here with my 7-year-old daughter and her friend, and we'd like to hear what advice you have in being a confident girl.
I feel like being 7 years old was really, really hard. It was tricky to advocate for myself. And my recommendation for your daughter and other 7-year-olds is to try to make friends with people who are different from you. Friendships are incredibly powerful. Friendships help you through difficult challenges. Friendships also bring new ideas, new skills, new innovations into your life. And people who are different from you are more likely to bring new ideas and also kindness and friendship and appreciation. So I hope more people can work on building friendships across differences and helping make our schools and libraries even stronger communities.
We have one more community question in the audience. Here we go.
One comment I would have is kind of follows that one, that in your book, it seemed like you made wonderful advances with people by your sense of humor and your willingness to laugh at things. And I think, that helps a lot in awkward situations. And and being totally blind, I just have to remember that when people do stupid things, you can just laugh at them. Not at them, but with them, sort of thing. So thank you.
Yeah, that is a very important distinction, laughing at someone versus laughing with them. And I learned very early on that humor helps me. Without humor, shame and embarrassment set in, and that is stifling. It holds you back and it makes it difficult for other people to connect with you, to befriend you. So humor is a balm for shame and helps build community. It dispels disability awkwardness. People are more likely to be able to ask questions. How can I help? How do we make this more accessible? If they can get past their nervousness and shyness, and humor helps get past that nervousness and shyness.
It's a great question and great answer.
I have a question. Maxine and Milo help you in your day-to-day life. How much access is it for blind and deaf people to actually own a seeing eye dog? Is it expensive? Are there ways of getting stipends for that?
So So the Seeing Eyes program doesn't charge you to come and train with the dog. The training is almost entirely free. There is, I think, initially $150 when you first go, and then $50 for the second dog and future dogs. The cost of actually training is much more. It's more like $50,000, but it's a charity and they cover that cost. But you are responsible for vet bills, food, and many of the same costs that pet owners have of caring for a dog. And it's absolutely worth it. There are other schools, guide dog schools, that have more stipends, though that might not be the right word, to cover vet bills and food for the dog. So every program is slightly different.
Thank you.
I have one more question. You do so much for your community. You do so much with your family, and you've got so much work to do with your advocacy. What do you do to relax?
So I'm able to relax because I set boundaries. So I really do have times when I say I can't answer this question because otherwise I would be advocating nonstop and I would lose all my energy. So it's really important to set boundaries, to say, today I'm teaching and advocating. Today I'm taking a break and I'm going to go hiking or a walk. I love going on walks with my dog, Milo. I love noticing all the fragrances that are coming out right now. A lot of trees, fruit trees, are blossoming in the Bay Area. So it's been fun to notice the magnolia, the fruit trees, walks, travel. I love traveling and trying new food. So I make sure to set boundaries between work and making sure there's time to play and relax.
I'm going to start our closing now. Thanks everyone for your questions. Our time is over. And thanks for joining us at the beginning of the Glenview Reads Together events. Come join us for the book discussion, and more programming details are on the website and in our brochure. And a big, huge thank you to Haben and her team for being with us here this afternoon. A gracious thank you to our captioner and ASL interpreters for allowing this event to be accessible for all the members of our community. It's been wonderful speaking with you, Haben.
Thank you so much for having me here. It's been a huge honor to be able to share my story in Glenview and also in Brazil and all the other places where people have been tuning in from. If you've been moved by the stories here, allow that inspiration to lead to action and help teach more people to remove barriers from our communities. Thanks, everyone.